Finally here. It is the day of the game. Ohio State and Michigan kicking off at noon or 12:14 or whatever on Fox today. I'm Tom Moore, joined by Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, it is the day that we count down to all year long. Finally here.
Finally here. Christmas morning, that sort of thing. All of those analogies are apt here. We've all put in the same amount of work. Whether it's the media or the players getting ready for it. It's something we look forward to every year. We talk about it. It's from the first day of Big Ten Media Days. We're looking forward to this game and the expectations and what it could be and what it means and what it could mean. And for today, it's Ohio State moving forward to the next step in the plan. And for Michigan, it's trying to ruin Ohio State's season. So there's definitely a spoiler aspect to things, and if anybody watched the Georgia Tech game last night, just be aware.
Well, this won't be exactly like that because the Big Ten Ohio State opponents are like 133rd in opponent penalties, whereas the officials last night treated Georgia like the parent of like an only child who's like, oh boy, this is our miracle baby. Like, oh look at Georgia. Did they target? Never. We know that from experience. Never.
They have some terrible drawings on their fridge from Georgia. Like, those are a unicorn or is it an apple?
Those are framed. Those are absolutely framed. Yes, that was. Georgia is unquestionably every bit as good as a 7-4 ACC unranked team. No question.
And they locked up their playoff spot last night. I don't know if you heard that.
Once I hear something 5,000 times, I stop believing it. So therefore, no, I never heard it last night. Sorry. Tony, I can say with some certainty Ohio State has locked up a playoff berth at this point.
Ref mic.
Good. Ref mic.
Two,
Speaking of refs having a big impact on things.
4.
Buckeyes coming in at 10-1,
2,
number 2 in the country.
3.
They've done
4.
what they need to do to this point. The Oregon game, number 1 team in the country, you're going in and you go to their stadium and you lose by 1 in the last minute. Someone had to lose that game. It was Ohio State. Other than that, they've really handled their business for the most part, and they've looked really good the last few weeks. And the competition hasn't been great in a couple of those games, but they really sort of handled things with Indiana. A little bit of a slow start. That's sort of been a little bit of a trademark this year. This is not a game where a slow start will doom them, but if they don't get off to a slow start, it feels like that's probably going to propel them to a nice, solid win.
Yeah, if you can get up in this game early for Ohio State and keep Michigan at arm's length and just continue to build on that and keep the momentum from ever siding with Michigan and the confidence, Michigan comes into this game only knowing wins against Michigan. I don't know if there are any Michigan players who have lost to Ohio State, if there's any sixth-year guys on that team or not. So they only know one thing. And so if things are going well for them, they'll be like, yeah, this is what happens. And then we continue to build on it. And so, if you can get up early, and I don't know how easy that's going to be in this one just because of the cold, but both teams are playing in it, and we will talk about it, I'm sure. But yeah, if things go slowly for Ohio State, that's still, I don't think it's doom because Michigan can only do so much offensively. So even over the course of a game, again, 24 points should win this, and you can get that in one half if you do it well.
And Ohio State can play from ahead or play from behind. Michigan, boy, do they need to be ahead. They really need to be ahead in this game. If Michigan's down a couple touchdowns, it's like one of the service academies being down a couple touchdowns. It's like, well, now you can't do all the stuff that you want to do. So we'll see how that. We'll see how the start of the game goes. We also should get through the availability report that is now out. We do not have the Michigan availability report. We can talk about that in a minute. But for the Buckeyes, guys who are out, no surprises, which is good news. Josh Simmons is out for the season. Seth McLaughlin's out for the season. T.C. Caffey's out for the season. Zen Mahalski's still out. Reese Stockstill out, and Nolan Votto out. That's it. No one questionable. It's
last week's list.
Yeah, it's last week's list. It is as healthy as you could expect them to be. Are there any concerns about Jeremiah Smith 2 weeks after the ankle thing at Northwestern? Just because of the cold, if anything else, that's about all you can really think of right now.
Yeah, and you do wonder how long it takes him to limber up, and the same thing for Colston Loveland. got on the elevator here with Doug Karsh, who is Michigan's play-by-play guy, and I said, "Any update on Loveland? Is he going to go?" And like, well, they're going to try him out in warm-ups and see if he can go. And I'm like, it's a terrible day to try out in warm-ups to see if you can go. So that's the status update on Colston Loveland. Is they're going to see, but there've been also reports that it's not likely for him to play, but we will see. You wake up and you feel better, or things are feeling worse, and this is not a day to wake up and feel better.
No.
So, but they've been working towards getting him ready for this game. They need him in this game, frankly.
Yeah, if you take him out, that takes away their biggest threat in the passing game. It just their whole wide receiver core. Was it you that put the stat out? I saw a stat somewhere that their whole wide receiver core has like 60 more yards receiving than Carnell Tate, who, if you're an Ohio State fan, you think of as, well, like, he's good, he's a starter, but he's like the third guy. And that's the whole Michigan wide receiver core. And they have thrown to the running backs out of the backfield, but Donovan Edwards is not putting up a 500-yard season this year. He's been, boy, if you need 3 yards, you can throw to Donovan Edwards, but that's kind of been what it is. We'll see what it is today. I'm sure they have plenty of stuff that they have not that they have been saving up for this one, because they're going to throw this kitchen sink at Ohio State too. There's no reason not to. This is a game that if Michigan loses, everyone goes, yeah, well, of course, because Ohio State was a 3-touchdown favorite. And if Michigan can just keep it close and just get it into the fourth quarter, that at that point, all the pressure's on Ohio State.
Yeah, that's where the nerve starts to take place. That's where every catch becomes bigger, every throw, every pass block, every run. A turnover can completely change the outcome of the game. Where if it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and we saw this against Oregon, where Michigan had it down to a one-score game, or about to be a one-score game, and then they lost the momentum and lost by 21, and it was close at one point, and there was some thought there, like if you just make one or two more plays, and if you leave this up to just one or two more plays, we've seen here 2 years ago where those plays Michigan made them. However they made them, they made them, and so you don't want to be in that situation where you have to make a play in a game where you are favored by almost 3 touchdowns. It shouldn't come down to that. We saw it come down to that in the Nebraska game, where that was uncomfortably close for Ohio State. Maybe that's a product of it just being Nebraska and coming off of a loss to Oregon and a bye week, and you're still, maybe feeling your sorrow and whatnot. And now this game, the emotions are right where you should want them, so there should be no sleepwalking in this one.
No, this should be one where, this is a team that they spent the last 12 months thinking about this game. That's why all these guys came back. Lisa was in the comments. I was just scrolling through the comments a minute ago. Lisa was talking about the fact that we look cold. We're not cold up here. We are cold down there. I'm wearing this hat in here because I've been wearing a hat all morning and my hair looks stupid because it's all sticking up in different directions. So that's why I'm wearing that in here. It is chilly out there. I was walking around and shot some video outside the stadium earlier, and boy, it is real chilly. Just walking in from the car, even with a pair of gloves on, I had a tripod which is metal, and the cold is just like going through the gloves. It's brisk.
And checking in through security here, I had to take my gloves off to open up my backpack, and by the time you're done with that, it's like my hands hurt. It's 19 degrees. We've felt that before, but it's a cold 19 right now.
Well, it's also it's a cold 19 because the sun has really not started heating things up. There's a little bit of a breeze, and you're this time of year you're not ready for it. You're not
thick yet.
You're not acclimated to it. It's in February. This is like, it's not shorts weather, but I could probably go outside without a coat.
Right.
In November, you're not quite ready for it yet. No. The field, I was also down on the field earlier. The field is a little harder than it typically is. There's still a little bit of give. This is not the 1970s AstroTurf by any means, but there's, it is a firmer field. Just the little rubber pellets in there are probably frozen, and there's not as much squish there. So, you're going to have. It's gonna probably hurt a little more to get tackled today. It's gonna, this is a game where it typically hurts because it's a little bit more hard hitting than a usual game. To me, the single biggest factor in this game, who wins this game, is the Ohio State offensive line versus the Michigan defensive line. Like every year, the game, the point in the trenches, all that kind of stuff. But in particular this year, it feels like Michigan's offense is going to do what Michigan's offense is going to do, and Michigan's offense is going to score between 10 and 14 points probably, and that's probably more or less it. And if the defensive line for Ohio State's great, maybe it'll be 3 or 6 points for Michigan, and if the defensive line for Ohio State's not great, maybe it's 17 or 20, but you're kind of within a touchdown or so of that 10 to 14 kind of range. For Ohio State, if the Ohio State offensive line can hold their own and run the ball, not a ton, but run the ball consistently, and give Will Howard time, it feels like Ohio State could get into the mid to high 30s. If Ohio State's offensive line really struggles and the Michigan defensive line gets a ton of pressure, it feels like, boy, they could keep Ohio State down into the 20 to 24 kind of range.
Yeah, it could be a 24-17 type of thing with Nebraska. I think when you look at Michigan's offense, you're talking, like you said, 10 to 14 points. Can they get another touchdown out of a trick play? Can they get a touchdown out of a bad Ohio State play? You know, and so now you're talking 24, 28, and then it becomes a real issue of getting the 28 to 31 for Ohio State when you've already lost a possession in there, and it's not going to be easy. So yeah, I know it comes down to running the ball and running this and running that. I still think the running games could be pretty even in terms of not being able to do much, which why I just keep going back to pass protection for Will Howard. And if you can pass protect, then he's going to be able to throw the ball. Now, got to be able to catch it, and the ball's going to be a little bit harder, or maybe a lot harder. So there is that, the conditions to deal with, but it is dry. So I think that's a positive. But if they can protect, they're going to get to Will Howard a couple of times. That's just how it goes. But if the overwhelming number of pass drops is him looking and being able to being able to look to your second or third read, then I think Ohio State will be okay. And they don't need to run it well. They need to pass protect. And then if they can do that, then this could be a 14, 17-point game, regardless of what happens in the ground game, I think.
Yeah, Ohio State feels like they have an advantage in an awful lot of spots around the field. You just kind of do the position-by-position, head-to-head matchups. It's just that's one where, Michigan has an advantage at place kicker and defensive line versus offensive line potentially. Those are the spots where it's like, boy, really need to do something there. On the other side for Michigan's offense, we watch every single Michigan game. We've seen Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards hit a couple big runs in certain games, and that's been the difference. Do they hit the couple big runs? Do you have the 6-yard run that turns into a 60-yard run because you miss a tackle or two? Do you take a bad angle? That's been the difference between the games that Michigan has won by 3 or 7 or lost by 3 or 7.
Yeah, that's the USC, that's Minnesota, where they get the plays that they need, and they don't get a lot. They just get the right ones, and they're also given some gifts. But if you tackle Khalil Mullings and don't give him a second opportunity, you don't give Donovan Edwards a second opportunity, then really there's nothing to there will be no production from the running game, because those are the two guys that it has to happen for. And they like Benjamin Hall, and they've got freshmen there, but really it's those two guys that will get the bulk of the work done. And add Alex Orji in their quarterback, who I think we'll see today, because they need as much offense as they can get, and he provides something else. He provides something in addition, and they need as much addition as possible. Sometimes that addition can be subtraction with the way he plays, but you've got to try everything, and you can't just assume that Davis Warren, Khalil Mullings, Donovan Edwards, and a receiver or tight end Marlon Klein will be enough, because it won't be. It hasn't been all season long, so you can't expect it to be enough for this one. So if Ohio State, the linebackers tackle, don't let either of those running backs get outside from, they hit a brick wall and they're like, well, let me see what's over here, and there's nothing over there because somebody has lost contain. Focus on that, but if you tackle them the first opportunity you get or the second opportunity you get, then there's really not much that you'll see from this running game.
And it's not just keeping the 6-yard plays from turning into 60s. It's also keeping the 2-yard plays from not turning into 4s, because this Michigan offense is really a struggle bus if they get behind schedule. If it's 3rd and 7 or worse, they had a stat on the Northwestern broadcast last week for the Michigan game, and 3rd and 7 or longer, Michigan had converted 19% of their 3rd and 7s or longer. So if you get them just off schedule, you don't even need to have a sack. You just get a tackle for a game, for 2 yards, 3 yards, and force an incomplete pass. Then they're basically, you've more or less set up. They're about to kick the ball, or they're going to have to pull a fake or go for it on 4th down. I mean, you really, if they are behind schedule, they're in big trouble. And it's so cliche to say that this game is going to come down to blocking and tackling, but it's truly going to come down to how well does the Ohio State offensive line block, how well does the Ohio State defense tackle? Because if you can just limit Michigan and just get, the first guy there gets them down, and whether it's Colombo Lings or Donovan Edwards or a tight end, I mean, there are a lot of 3-yard throws in this offense for Michigan too. There's not a lot of downfield, even mid-range throws. So if you can get them and keep them from turning the throw behind the line of scrimmage into a 6-yard gain, and it's just a 2 or 3-yard gain, that's going to be like a seemingly small thing that's going to end up making a big difference today.
Yeah, and they'll pick up some first downs, but then they're going to have to do it again and again and again. And if you make them go 70 yards, you'll find out that they'll generally only go about 45. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about this, and we talked about this week, where Michigan has given up a sack on 14 drives this year. They've turned one of those drives into a touchdown.
Yeah.
So if you and that was against Arkansas State. They've not been able to score a touchdown in a game where they've given up a sack, in a drive where they've given up a sack against a Power 4 opponent. I think they've done it 11 times, and all they've gotten out of that in terms of scoring is a 56-yard field goal last week. So if you sack the quarterback, a pretty good chance that drive is done, whether it's first, second, or certainly 3rd down. So there will be the focus is on stopping the run. But anytime you get to Davis Warren or Alex Orji, if he's throwing the ball, anytime you get to one of their quarterbacks, that is a drive killer. It's like a hold when your offense is struggling, and it's like, well, yeah, that's a devastating play right there. And with a sack, of course, you don't get to do the play over. Nope. You don't get the down over. So now you've got to get who knows how many yards in fewer plays. So if you can get to Davis Warren, and like we talked about this week, I don't expect him to just drop back and wait and wait and wait. That's not their passing game. It's a short passing game. We know that. So it's not an Ohio State pro-style passing game where you're looking downfield on a deep end or something like that. These are quick throws, quick screens, into the flats, curl routes, stuff that Davis Warren can kind of pick a defense apart, but it doesn't go very far. And then you have to, if you force one incompletion, now you put more pressure on the Michigan offense to execute these next 2 plays to perfection, and it's not very easy for them to do.
And there's going to be a lot of pressure on Michigan throughout the game just to be able to try and stay on schedule, because nothing comes easy for this offense this year. Ohio State, you have, to a certain degree, you have like a Jeremiah Smith, which is press the easy button and run the Jeremiah Smith do something cool play, and that has worked a lot of times when they have run that. For Michigan, it's not going to come easy today, and that's one of the reasons we've talked this week about the fact that expect the unexpected on special teams, where Michigan, I go back to the Oregon game, where Oregon, a much more dynamic offense, still knew, hey, it's a close game, you got to find a way to steal a possession, and they ran the surprise onside kick in the second quarter of that game. Expect Michigan to do something like that, whether it's an onside kick, a fake punt, a fake field goal, something. They've got to find a way to steal an extra possession in the game, not only for the potential points, but also to keep the Ohio State offense off the field, because if the Ohio State offense has 9 possessions, that's one kind of game for Michigan. If Ohio State offense has 12 possessions, that puts a ton more pressure on the defense and the offense, which means you got to find a way to do something in special teams if you're the Wolverines.
Well, and even that onside kick was the product of a penalty from Jordan Hancock. So don't commit 15-yard penalties and give Michigan whether it's free yards or an opportunity to, we can gamble here on an onside kick. We can gamble on this, because wouldn't be as costly as it would be without these 15 yards. So don't commit those penalties. Don't we G. Scott a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Don't commit those kinds of penalties where you're rewarding Michigan for nothing, basically. So make Michigan earn everything. The Michigan offense, the best way I could equate this for Ohio State fans is all of Michigan's offense all game long. It's kind of like Ohio State's offense on the first drive, where nothing looks as easy as it should. Everything seems like a struggle, and then you throw short of the sticks. That's Michigan's offense pretty much throughout the course of the game, especially against a quality defense.
Yeah, it's a thing where you've got to just do all the little things, and that's what this game comes down to every year, and that's what you just get so tired of hearing coaches talk about it. But it's like, well, there's a reason we used to sit up here and listen to Earl Bruce talk about all the little things and pounding the table. I mean, year after year after year, he'd be up here, and it was the same thing with Earl. It was like, well, Earl won this game a bunch of times, so I think he might know what he's talking about.
I learned a lot of cuss words from Earl. Good times. I'd never heard cuss words before.
No, never. Not a once.
Not a once.
Not a once. Yeah. So let's run real quickly through the Ohio State secondary, because that feels like you don't need a ton out of the secondary, but you need to not hand Michigan 15 yards on a pass interference call. You need to not get grabby, because this is just no disrespect to the Michigan wide receivers, but the stats are what the stats are. This is just not that dynamic group. Well, all you have to do is you've got to trust yourself. If you're Davis Nagvanosin, you have to just trust the fact that, look, the quarterback has been sailing a lot of passes. The pass rush is probably going to get there relatively quickly, so you don't need to cover for 4 seconds. You just have to trust yourself and not hand them 15 yards, because you know the officials are looking for it at this point.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through my head, like, where would Michigan's receivers rank in terms of receiving cores that we've seen this year? Because it's very middle of the pack, and probably lower than that.
Well,
Northwestern had Bryce Kurtz, and he made some plays. The Michigan receivers have not made plays this year. They've not made plays after the catch. They're not downfield. They don't go up and get things. They're all small, relatively small. They keep talking up Marion Walker, who is 6'3" and has all of this speed, and he has 3 catches on the year because they can't use him in any way. Like, this is not throw it up, a 50-50 ball for Nico Collins. I have not seen a single 50-50 ball this year, I don't think, from the Michigan receivers. They don't do it.
Yeah.
And they don't. There's a reason. One, they don't have a quarterback that can stretch the field.
I was going to say, it's hard to throw a 50-50 ball behind the line of scrimmage.
Yes, well, there is, although some of them are. But also, the pass protection is an issue with their tackles, and not just the tackles, but everybody there. And so there's no ingredient to a deep passing game on this Michigan offense. You don't have the quarterback, you don't have the offensive line, you don't have the receivers, and from what we've seen, you don't have the coordinator either. You don't have the play designer and the play caller to get that done. So, but at some point, and that's why we talked about yesterday on the live show, I could see a double pass being the attempt at a deep shot in this one, and that's more of there's just nobody covering that guy, so there doesn't have to be a 50-50.
Yeah.
But whether it's a halfback option, flea flicker, wouldn't shock me if you see all 3 of those things, just to try anything to stretch the field, because if they can get a 40-yard pass play or a 40-yard play of some sort, then that's 3 or 4 first downs they don't have to get, and it makes their lives much, much easier. It's just really hard to get that done.
Yeah, they've got to find a way to do that, because you don't think they're going to be able to consistently hit the passes they need to hit the runs they need to hit. Because Ohio State, you would assume Ohio State's going to be pretty aggressive on defense, play pretty close to the line of scrimmage, and maybe you leave a single high safety, but you're going to play a lot of guys in the box until Michigan shows you they can burn you with that, and they did a couple times in 2022. It's not that this year you haven't seen it, and I think you kind of have to make Michigan show you that, okay, you did it in 2022. Can you do it again this year? Because we hadn't really seen it in 2022, but J.J. McCarthy ended up being a first-round NFL draft pick. I don't think that's probably Davis Warren's future, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. One other reason that Michigan is going to have to find ways to score on offense, hit the big plays, so you just get something on offense, and also why the special teams thing was such an important thing. You don't have Will Johnson, almost certainly. Now, this is not official yet, but all indications are that Will Johnson is going to miss the game. And you go back to some of the Michigan Monday shows at the beginning of the season, and you and I are talking about the fact that, yeah, they keep winning by that much, and they're winning by that much because either they're hitting a big play where the other team's missing a tackle, and or Will Johnson's running back a pick six. And that was, what, 3 times earlier in the season, 2-3 times earlier in the season that he had, either ran back a pick six or ran back an interception and set up a short field. So much of Michigan's offense this year has been either scored by the defense or set up by the defense. Indiana, the first field goal of the game for Michigan, was set up by an interception by Zeke Berry that gave them the ball first and goal at the 7-yard line, and they got 3 points out of it. But they didn't have to move the ball to get 3 points. If Ohio State, again, this is one of the most cliched, caveats in the world, but if Ohio State doesn't turn the ball over and Ohio State doesn't give Michigan short fields, it feels like that's one of those things where if you tell me Ohio State's even in turnovers, I'm really struggling to see a way that Michigan wins this game.
No, I'm completely with you. We've said it all season long. If you don't give Michigan the game, you will win the game. And while Ohio State is more talented and is a better team this year, giving the ball over, turning it over, giving them short fields, that's how you're going to keep Michigan in it. That's how you're going to allow them to score points by not forcing them to go 75 yards on a kickoff, into the end zone, or the punting game isn't where it needs to be, or there's a shake here, and so now you only have to go 32 yards for a field goal attempt. And just so you know, the field goal range for Michigan is the 40-yard line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, this one, conditions, you're going to be kicking a bit of a harder ball, but Dominic Zavada is one of the best kickers in the nation. I do wonder if that ends up being maybe a bad thing for Michigan, in that if you are going to be more reliant on field goals, I don't know how wise that's going to be over the course of this game, where they will need touchdowns. So Sherrone Moore has been aggressive on 4th downs in the past, certainly in this rivalry. So I would assume you would keep doing that and not just rely on your kicker. And then what that does is then it just sets up a new set of downs where Michigan now also, you've got a first down, but now you've got to go get another. And that's, again, if you just make them work for it, they can only do so much. And if you don't give them things, then it's really hard for them to take it. So this is a lot of just playing a clean game, and you play clean game, profit. That's it.
Yeah. And if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat for us. I have a super chat from Mike Ferguson wanted to get to. Just want to remind everyone that if Georgia wins the game, they're in the playoff. Now, I got to tell you, Tony, this is the first I'm hearing about this, but...
Yeah, the thing is, Tom, by winning that game, they are now 9-3 on the season. And so that means they have 3 times as many wins as they do losses. And also SEC, and then also, if you remember, SEC. And so now they're in, they're 10-2, right?
They're 10-2.
10-2.
So yes.
The third loss is irregardless, as people say, Tom, about those third losses, especially against an SEC team. Like, how do you keep them out at that point?
Well, you got to remember Georgia Tech was an SEC team at one point several decades ago. So basically, this is another conference win. So really, they played 9 conference games. If you think about it, it's too bad they didn't get Sewanee on the schedule this year, because man, could have had 10. But didn't quite get there. But yeah, I think we have firmly established that Georgia is at least as good as a 7-5 ACC team.
As long
as the game's in Athens.
And all the SEC refs.
Yes.
I mean,
that was
the holding call.
I don't know if the targeting call, like, maybe I and everyone else on earth is missing something on the targeting call. Everyone knows what holding is. And it wasn't like, well, this was in the middle of the line and it was, hidden away between. It was like, well, if you're looking at the quarterback, it was impossible. I've never seen a defensive lineman get horse collared before.
That's the other thing. I was waiting for a horse collar as well, but I guess since he didn't have the ball.
Geiger Lee says, Tommy Eichenberg says, YouTube viewers, remember the thumbs up? So thumbs up for everyone. That's more words than I think I've ever heard Tommy Eichenberg say at any time. But
Geiger Lee understands grunting.
There you go. GOJ says, Ohio State can't allow an unknown to have a Tim Biakabatuka Saturday. I mean, Donovan Edwards kind of had one for about a 5-minute span 2 years ago, but really Michigan has not run the ball super consistently against Ohio State.
And if one of those two guys goes off for 150 or 200 yards, the defense is guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like saying, like, the people who are like, yeah, you deserve to lose that game. But if you give up 150 yards rushing to one of these guys, I'm not going to say a loss would be undeserved.
No. Markedex says this is really the perfect game to see where the offensive line is. Michigan will struggle to score, and will give our offense what it needs to grow and move on to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a really good point where you have an idea of where things are, but now you're going to find out exactly where this offensive line is and what you maybe expect from it the rest of the way out. And we keep talking about the Donovan Jackson versus Josiah Stewart, and seeing how much Donovan Jackson has grown into 4 games or 3 games since the Abdul Carter game against Penn State, where they gave him a lot of help. The couple of times they didn't, Abdul Carter got around him. How much help do they give him in this one? How much help do they feel they need to give him in this one? Do you go it alone for a little while, knowing that if he gets around him and gets the blind side, or that could be a turnover? Will Howard has been pretty good about turnovers of late, but he usually turns it over at least once against very good defenses, and so this is what they're running into. So I'm expecting a turnover for Will Howard, just because that's kind of what he's been, but I'm expecting many more good plays to negate that one turnover, and then Michigan has to do something with that turnover. If it's just a wasted possession for Ohio State, you can live with that. You don't want Michigan to turn anything into points that you give them.
Well, and you can live with one wasted possession. You can't live with 3 wasted possessions. You've got to. This is one where if you can get out ahead, as I said earlier, if you get out ahead and you're up 2 scores, Michigan's in deep trouble, because then the thing that they can do somewhat consistently sometimes is more difficult to do, and then they have to really play left-handed, which is Colston Loveland playing. We'll see. For folks who are joining us late, share what you heard on the way into the stadium.
Riding up on the elevator with Doug Karsh, who is the Michigan play-by-play guy, the radio play-by-play guy, I asked him if Colston Loveland was going to go, and they said they're going to work him out at the this morning and see if he's good to go out there in warm-ups, and if he is, then we'll see. But that's the latest. Don't know yet, but they're going to try it.
Super Chat from Will Zerk says, come out of the booth, go mingle with the crowd. I want to see the atmosphere. There's not really an atmosphere behind us right now. It's still 3 hours and 12 minutes before kickoff, so they're not going to open the gates for another hour and 15 minutes or so. So there's not. If you want to look around the stadium, I just posted a behind-the-scenes video from a couple hours ago, just real early morning kind of behind the scenes, so you can see that. We don't have the ability to go walk the camera around right now outside the stadium. First of all, we'll lose our signal, and you'll not be able to see or hear us. But also, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get down there from where we are. So
yeah, I'm up and I'm warm now. I'm not.
We'll be down there. Don't worry, I'll be down on the field all day. We'll have plenty of stuff from down on the field in just a little bit.
I won't worry.
AP says, watching from Lyon, France, by way of Cincinnati, Ohio, USA.
Viva la France.
There you go.
And Vida Loca.
I would have been more excited if it was Lyon Estates, but Lyon, France, also pretty good.
It's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
I would like to go to Europe sometime. I would like to see the museums and things like that.
Lisa says the slow starts drive her crazy every game. We just like for once if they can come out and score some points. If you're Ohio State and you win the toss, I assume you have to defer. I don't know that there's a compelling argument to not defer this, and I'm sure if Michigan wins, they will also defer.
Yeah, that's. I would chastise anybody who says Ohio State should take the ball and let's get some points on the board. No, get the crowd in the game, let them get warmed up, erase that first possession, and just go from there. Because if you go 3-0, it's like you've won the toss anyway. So. And we know how Ryan Day feels about those middle 8, the last 4 of the second quarter and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. That can basically end the game if you do those 8 minutes correctly. That could put this game out of reach if it is done correctly.
Yep. Markedex says over under 7 points for both teams combined in the first quarter. I'm probably taking the under because I don't think I mean, Michigan maybe scores 3 on the first drive, but if Michigan scores 3 on the first drive, they're chewing 7 minutes of clock up to do it. So I will take the under and think, I think there's a decent possibility that's a push.
Yeah.
It feels like that's either a push or an under more than likely to me.
Yeah, that's how I would feel. And if anybody watched the live stream yesterday, we were going through halftime scores of this game since 2014, and the only time it was more than a one-score game was 2019. So just be prepared is what I'll say.
Yeah, in the 2018 game, Ohio State controlled the first half, and talking about the middle eight, they gave up a touchdown, I think, and then Mario McCall immediately fumbles the ensuing kickoff, and then Michigan gets the ball inside the 10 and immediately scores the next play, and it was like 14 points in like 8 seconds. So you can't do that. There's a bunch of Ohio State can't get completely whipped on the offensive line. Ohio State can't give Michigan a bunch of easy points. If they don't do those two things, if Ohio State can't turn the ball over 4 times, 3-4 times. If you don't do those things, you're in pretty good shape. I saw someone on our board last night saying he was really stressed out about this game, and it's like, unless you were just saying sometimes weird stuff happens in the series, I don't think there's a thing that you go, there's stuff that, and we've talked about it already with Michigan's defensive line and all that. There's stuff that you go, yeah, this could be a closer game than expected. Michigan could cover. I think you need a cascading series of somewhat unlikely and extremely unfortunate for Ohio State events for Michigan to win this game.
Yeah, one on top of the other on top of the other. I promise you, Michigan fans are more scared of this one than Ohio State fans are, because of all of the different things that Michigan fans have to worry about, Michigan has to worry about. Like, think of what you're worried about as an Ohio State fan. You're worried about Michigan's defensive line, and you're worried about the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan is worried about the knowns.
Yeah.
Michigan fans are worried about all of the knowns, and there are unknowns for them as well, because that's just what this rivalry is. But would you rather have on your side Jeremiah Smith or the unknown?
Samaj Morgan.
The known. So I think there's a reason Ohio State is a 20-point favorite. There's a reason why nerves are what they are, though.
Yep.
Because, and I'm sure if anybody watched last night, the Georgia Tech, that does not help anything. That does not help your thoughts in any way in preparation or as you get ready to watch this one. But nerves are always here. It's a rare thing where, this is like 2008 when you can just sit back and enjoy it. 2009, you can just sit back and enjoy it because you're watching one of the worst Michigan teams of all time. So, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if the first half's ever supposed to be fun.
No, it's not like that. And even the 2009 game, we talked about that earlier in the week, where, you had Tate Forcier fumble the ball and Ohio State got a touchdown out of that early. That game ended up like 22-10 or something. That was not a runaway by any means. It was just kind of Michigan never really seriously threatened. That was 42-7 and 22-10, something like that, and then 37-7. Those 3 years of Rich Rod. That's about the last time you've gone in and said Ohio Sate absolutely want this team.
Well, and the 2013 game, Ohio State was like 16.5, 17-point favorites, and that was a 43-42 game, something like that, where Ohio State had to intercept a 2-point conversion to hang on.
Ryan Dawes says, "Who wants to see Ohio State score on a flea flicker? That would be some fun irony."
We saw
hoisted on their own petard.
I don't think we have not seen a flea flicker from them this year. We did see Emeka Ibuka drop back to attempt a pass.
Yeah.
Did you happen to see the Lions and Penei Sewell? The Lions ran an end around for Penei Sewell, their starting tackle, and he was going to throw the ball.
Oh, yeah.
And then the receiver was not open, so then he just stiff-armed a couple of Bears down to the ground and ran towards the sideline. I'm not saying look out for Josh Fryer or Donovan Jackson to throw the ball. I don't think.
Mic check 1 2. Internal PA mic check 1 2.
I do think a flea flicker might be remarkably effective for Ohio State in this one, because it's not something they've done. But this is also not something where the Michigan wrinkle. I don't think that's something you need. But if you're looking for maybe a fourth quarter comedy,
Well, there's also a certain amount of, the Don Draper elevator scene where, I feel bad for you. I don't think about you at all. There's a certain amount of, if Ohio State handles business today, they've got Oregon on deck. And if you've got something like that you feel will really surprise people, you probably want to hang on to that for an Oregon game where you're not you're not going to be favored by 3 touchdowns next week. You might be. I've seen Ohio State lines projected at Ohio State favored by a touchdown. Which boy, I hope you're ready. Brace yourself. Prepare yourself for a week of hashtag narrative around that one. But it's a game where if Ohio State doesn't have to, I'm sure Ohio State would love to win this game by 30 points. If Ohio State has a choice between burning something that they might need next week to get from 24 to 31 points, well, you're probably, I'm sure, I know there's a lot of personal animus in this series, but you're also better off just hold your powder and wait for next week.
Yeah, there's nothing that says you can't score off tackle instead.
Mm-hmm.
Block and run and break a tackle and do it the old-fashioned way.
So where is Kevin? Geigerly wants to know, is he strolling around the tailgates? I don't see him down there.
He would be.
He is down there. He is down there now. So he's down. He's here. So Mike Ferguson wants to know if I'm wearing shorts today. No, I am not wearing shorts today. I am appropriately layered up. I went outside yesterday just to take the dog and go throw the frisbee at the park for a little while, and it was oh boy, I was out there for 20 minutes. I'm I can't feel my hands. I did not wear gloves yesterday. I have gloves today.
Moved a bunch of plants inside this yesterday, and boy, it's not great.
No. Just scrolling through some questions here and comments here. Let's see. Geiger Lee says, dilemma I'm facing, Big Noon kickoff at 9 or stay on Buckeye Huddle Live. I don't think Big Noon kickoff even starts till 10.
It's a 3-hour show.
Oh, is it a 3-hour show today?
This week, yeah.
Well, they'll be here long after we are, so that's okay. We have other stuff to do today. We got to get running down there in a little bit. It's just me. Tim says Michigan and Georgia should be the 2 most hated teams for Ohio State. Georgia's kind of in that Clemson spot where they beat Ohio State, and there was a lot of ifs and a lot of ifs and buts on the last loss, and so that I'm sure has stoked a little bit of.
But I also think that game Ohio State felt like they did enough to win that one, and there was never that Clemson thing. They came back in 2020 focused on Clemson. That focused on that game, wanting another shot. I don't think I've ever heard the word Georgia since that Georgia game.
No,
so it's kind of different. In that way.
Yeah. Casino Scoop says, "Will you show the Senior Day festivities?" So we don't have the rights to broadcast live inside the stadium after a certain point, so we can't show them live. We are planning to shoot them and produce a piece with them, so we will have them on our YouTube channel. That's probably Sunday, realistically, based on the length of post-game show and amount of other work to do after the game. We'll try and get that together for you on Sunday. But yeah, we'll try and have the entire Senior Day festivities from multiple cameras and put it together. If you just search behind the scenes on our YouTube channel, behind the scenes or college football traditions, we've done a bunch of these shows. Behind the scenes of the Ohio State marching band ramp entrance, behind the scenes of the team walk, behind the scenes of the tunnel entrance. We've done a bunch of those this year, so we'll do one of those for the Senior Day today as well. A lot of people saying it's cold outside. Yes, can confirm.
It's just good to see America coming together and agreeing on something. This is great.
Mm-hmm. Lisa Sims says, I say that Will Howard will go down in Buckeye history as a beloved Buckeye for helping beat Michigan today.
This is one of those things where I don't think at any point, certainly not at this point last year, when we talked about this before, after last year's game, we went and had dinner in Bowling Green on the way home and watched Kansas State and Iowa State play in the snow. Nobody thought that we were watching Ohio State's future quarterback in that game. Certainly nobody thought we were watching somebody that would become such a fan favorite. And even that after he transferred to Ohio State, there was still a bunch of like, what? This is what we've come to. This is where we are now. And so yeah, like if he can get this win, then he's a favorite forever. And if he can continue to win, then he is going to be a Buckeye legend with just 1 year under his belt. But he has done so much, and he does well with the media. So he talks a lot and says a lot of good things. He will step up when he's not played well, and he will talk about that. But the way he has played, the fans have taken to him, and that's why I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. Like people wanting a Heisman, people upset at Ohio State that they're not pushing him for the Heisman. I'm like, he has had no Heisman moments.
Right.
The fans just really like the guy.
Right.
And that's not enough to be a Heisman candidate. Right. But it is interesting to see just this push of he doesn't get badmouthed by anybody. C.J. Stroud got badmouthed by Buckeye fans. Not constantly, but
at moments for sure.
Moments.
Yeah. It's Will Howard. Why isn't Ohio State pushing Will Howard? Like that's getting pushed by the exact same people that are pushing why is the beat in a conspiracy to say that the artificial turf at Ohio Stadium might not be solely responsible for every bad thing that's ever happened. It's like, well, you can do something other than just try and get people whipped up and angry just to get attention. Like there's a certain segment of that group that is the Will Howard Heisman campaign thing. It's not the stupidest thing I've seen this year, but non-Danny Cannell division it might be. Terry Mitchell says, Will Howard, don't panic in the pocket if you have to take a sack. Live for another down. Please throw that wide receiver screen out of the playbook. It reads pick six every time I see it.
Yeah, and we you almost saw that in that again the Georgia Tech on one of those 2-point conversions.
Oh yeah.
For Georgia Tech, which was a quick screen out wide, and it would have been a pick six except the first Georgia defender batted it out of the air. So yeah, those are ones where you're going to see Michigan jump on those because they're going to be trying to make plays. You do something off of that.
You can take an advantage of that. Yeah. Terry Mitchell also says, if we win the coin flip, do we take the ball or defer? I think that's a very, very easy one.
Yeah, defer that one and get your defense out there, get Michigan's offense out there, and get things going, get the crowd going. You want them loud from the get-go, and then that'll just keep them warm, and then they'll realize, you know what? In order to stay warm, we have to stay loud.
Brian Dawes wants to know if we have snow. No snow. I mean, there were little flurries yesterday, and I think we're supposed to maybe get some snow tonight, maybe. And it is cold enough that it will stick, but not. There's nothing right now. It's cold. It's not particularly windy. It's not snowing.
It wasn't supposed to rain last week.
No.
And it did.
And if you look, I mean, I don't know if you can see the smokestacks behind us.
It's awesome.
It's sun, and I don't think it's working. The smoke is it's blowing a little bit, but it's not, if the wind's really whipping, you don't really see the smoke. But it's going up slowly. So, yeah, it's not super windy. Tim says, take good picks, Tom, which that's the plan. We'll see. We'll see if we can execute the game plan.
I always forget to tell him, and you see what happens. So thank you for that reminder. I'm sure he will take it to heart. Doesn't always matter though. We tell him to do a lot of things. And then it comes back and it's like, is this your thumb? Yes. You got to get that out of there.
Why is that in every picture that doesn't also have the lens cap in it? How did you get a picture of the lens cap and your thumb on the same picture? I didn't think that was even possible. Here's one from Lisa Sims. How many seniors this year? We had that. You have the list of
31 seniors will be introduced.
Yeah, 31 seniors. And I'm sure everyone wants to know who is going to be the last person introduced. I'm going to ask people to put a guess in there in the order that those folks are in. Give us the last 3 seniors in order, and we'll tell you the answer in just a couple of minutes. Also, take a second, hit the thumbs up for us if you have not done that already. That helps other folks find these shows. Mike Ferguson says the hot cocoa will be served at 40 degrees after the first quarter, as is tradition. I got to tell you, I was delighted to see that they have hot cocoa down in the photo room down there. That is, they had water down there when it was 150 degrees or whatever it was on the field earlier in the year. So yes, that was. I went up and thanked Jerry. Personally thanked Jerry. He said it was Mike, but
yeah. Well,
they're taking care of us today because it's gonna be chilly down there.
The coldest game that I've ever been at was a Bears game in Cincinnati. It would have been like 1997 or so, where our drinks would freeze and you'd have to like break them open to drink them like throughout the game. I only lasted until about the third quarter, and then we left. I did not have enough socks on. You're losing feeling in your toes, but this is a game where you're gonna have to break the top of your drink to drink it.
Yeah, and I think the coldest game I've ever been to was the 2002 Army-Navy game. That was at the old Giant Stadium, and it wasn't that cold. It was probably more or less like today, where it was in the 20s. But the wind was whipping. Our seats were kind of underneath the overhang, so we're in the shade the whole game. The wind is really going. The wind really blows out of the Meadowlands. That stadium, like the wind just gets in there and just blows in a circle. We had blankets. We had multiple. It was like nope. And fortunately, that was a game Navy won, I think 58-6. That was the first year of Paul Johnson at Navy. Craig Candido was Navy's quarterback, scored 6 touchdowns rushing that game. He was later, Tony, the head coach of which Ohio college?
Marietta.
Close. Capital.
See, I was close.
So, yes.
I've told this before, but back in my freshman year was 1994, and every game that year it was warm enough to wear shorts for, and including this game. And not warm enough to wear shorts for this one. One of the colder games I ever had here was Purdue, and it would have been in the 90s. But it was raining and icing. It was like sleet, and then there was like a standing, like you're standing in the water as well, and it's just like you're freezing from the bottom up and the top down, and then it meets in the middle. That would have been like 95 or 97 probably.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think that must have been 95. I don't remember a cold Purdue game in 97, so it must have been 95. Yeah, that was. There are different kinds of cold games. If it's just cold, that's fine. If it's cold and wet, like the 2003 Wisconsin game up in Madison, it wasn't supposed to rain, and it is absolutely monsooned in the first half or early second half, and then the temperature dropped about 20 degrees, and the wind started going, and that was not a good time at all. This is just cold. This is the kind of cold where it's like, the players have the heated benches.
Yeah.
They'll have the little propane heaters on the sideline and all that kind of stuff. And you got gloves. Like, they'll be fine. This should not have a significant impact. Will Howard has played in cold games before. Will Howard grew up in a place where it is cold. So, this will be, as we said earlier in the week, this will be the first first game that Jeremiah Smith has probably played that's this cold. But, everyone else, Carnell Tate's from Chicago. Emeka Zabuka's from the Northwest. Like, these guys are from places that it's cold, and a lot of them have been in Columbus for a bunch of years, so this is not a brand new thing.
The weather for the game 30 years ago, now it was November 19th, so it's a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
60 degrees with winds out of the south-southwest, 5 to 10 miles per hour.
2 years ago here, it was in the 50s and sunny, so yeah, it is. We have been to a wide variety of Michigan Ohio State games over the years. I think we are more or less caught up on questions. So let's run through the seniors, and then we can wrap it up.
So what do you want me to run? All of them?
Well, I mean, we got the walk-ons.
Yeah.
Well, I think go ahead and start with the first scholarship guy who I've seen people suggest could be one of the last guys. Nope.
Yeah, so the first scholarship guy will be Seth McLaughlin, and he will be about the 12th or 13th guy. And then, if the order is correct, and we're led to believe it is, right after Seth McLaughlin will be Will Howard. So you've got the transfers in there. And then you get to Court Williams, Patrick Gerd, Jordan Hancock, G. Scott Jr., Denzel Burke, Josh Fryer, Ty Hamilton, Lathan Ransom, Donovan Jackson, Tyleek Williams, JT Tuimoloau, and you're down to your 4 captains. And they will be introduced in this order, if all is correct on our list. Jack Sawyer, then Travion Henderson, then Emeka Ibuka, and then your Blocko recipient, Cody Simon.
Yeah. And that's, I've seen, I think there's a lot of guys in there that you could make a very compelling case for.
I thought they'd go with Jack Sawyer.
I thought Jack Sawyer's a possibility. I think Jack Sawyer might be the block O guy, but man, it is hard to argue with Cody Simon with everything he's done. He's been here as long as anyone, been just dynamite this year. And
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, and what I was going to say is we haven't talked about the Ohio State pass rush against Michigan's offensive line yet, which is hard to believe. I missed that one, but boy, they typically line up with JT Tuimoloau over the left tackle and Jack Sawyer over the right tackle. Jack Sawyer versus Evan Link. Tony, watch this space.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one, and that's been Michigan's weak link all season long, no pun intended. And that's going to be one where Jack Sawyer was sack and a half last week. I think those two guys will. They had maybe two and a half total sacks last week. That's probably a decent over under, and I mean that's a little bit. That's a lot for two guys, but in this game, it just depends on how long Davis Ward holds the ball. So if he holds it too long, they're going to get to him, and that's Cody Simon on the blitz has been effective. Sonny Styles on the blitz. I think at some point he's going to be hearing voices, hearing footprints, seeing ghosts. If they get after him early, then that will pay dividends all throughout the game. I will say the last three guys, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, and Cody Simon, all have dealt with injuries in their time at Ohio State. So I don't know if that has anything to do with them being the last three, but they've certainly paid their dues. But of course, so has Lathan Ransom.
Yeah. Well, and you look through that list, and it's like, man, there's a lot of guys who've had just great careers at Ohio State. And I mean, starting with Jordan Hancock, G. Scott, Denzel Burke, Josh Fryer, Ty Hamilton, Lathan Ransom, Donovan Jackson, Tyler Williams, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, Cody Simon. All of those guys have been really important players over the span of multiple years, really had great careers. There's only a couple things missing.
Yeah.
All of those things, they can check all of those boxes. The first box gets checked today if they handle their business. I don't think focus is going to be an issue. I think this is going to be just don't try to do too much kind of game. Just do your job, let everyone else do their jobs, and that probably will take care of a lot of stuff. You know, here's the inside of you there are two wolves. One of them is Toby Burke. He says Michigan has no chance this year. Gary Williams says, "Oh, don't ever think Michigan doesn't have a chance because they do." You know, we have previewed the game. We've talked about the game a million times this week. We ended up having very similar score predictions. What did you go with?
I went with 31-13 for Ohio State. I don't know that I feel like revising that now with the cold. We knew it was going to be cold.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to throw up like 49-7 or something like that, just because we've seen that you've got to bring the numbers way down this year and then kind of build back up. So 31-13, not overwhelming, but whelming enough.
Yeah, if you win by 3 touchdowns and some change, that's more than enough. I know everyone has this taste for blood today, but there are bigger pictures. You know, there are. This is the game. This is the game you count down all year to. There are bigger games ahead for Ohio State. I had 31-10. Very similar thought process to you. Probably on pure talent, it's maybe 38-10, something like that. But you've seen the number of plays scale way back, the number of possessions scale way back. Is there a way that Ohio State gets out front, gets a turnover or two, and gets it into the 40s? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's a way. There's a way this ends up 45-6. Yeah. There's a way that this ends up 28-20. You know, there's 28-24 even if you get a turnover or something like that. How did we do that?
That's interesting.
No one touched anything. All right. Well, must be time. That's our phone. That's our stuff telling us it must be time to wrap up. So, thank you guys all for joining us. Make sure go as soon as we end this stream. You got two pieces of homework. No, there we go. 2 pieces of homework. 1, check out our behind the scenes video, walking around the stadium 5 hours before kickoff. Just look around the stadium at what things are like before anyone else comes in today. And number 2, go ahead right now. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also make sure you open up the post-game show. Just open up the post-game show on a tab on your laptop or your desktop or whatever. Just have it open, turn the volume up, Not going to be anything there until after the game. As soon as that game wraps up, and sometimes we start a little early, so that's why you want to start make sure that's open and ready to go. And then join us for that post-game show. Oh boy, Tony, will there be a lot to talk about on the post-game show, no matter whether it is 45-6 or 28-24 or something else. So make sure you join us for that. Make sure you also join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. Got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there to make you a smarter football fan. It's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That will do it for today. That will do it for now, guys. Enjoy the game. Please enjoy the game. Don't get too stressed out. Just enjoy the game. You wait all year for it. It's finally here. We will talk to you after the game.